Hey there, it is Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
While we're excited to have Pastor Brad Hambrick with us again, as I mentioned before we went live, I wasn't sure he would come back on. He figured out who we were and said, these guys, but we are so grateful for him. He's got a huge heart and the content of what he talks about and writes. And he's also a very, very funny man. So we'll talk about all of that here in just ahead.
Now we're going to overpromise and underdeliver.
I think we talked to you back right after the book Angry with God was released. And what a great book. Perfect timing for all of us. I think, have you ever had someone say, gosh, Brad, I didn't think I was angry with God. And then I read your book and I realized I've been angry all these years. Have you had anybody say that to you?
Plenty of people would say, like, I knew I was upset. I didn't know if I could call it anger.
Yeah.
Like there was energy, there was unrest, there were questions that I wanted to ask that I didn't realize that God invited and welcomed those and wanted that to be part of the conversation. And so, yeah, there's a little skittishness on calling something anger when we're having conversation with God. But again, like we talked about last time, I think the Psalms invite very honest and candid conversations between us and God.
Yeah. If nothing else, I think people see, thank you, Brad, because, I do feel angry at God and I'm not odd in that. It's not unusual for people to be angry with God and God can take it. He's big.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, I agree he can take it, but he also invites it. When you look at the Psalms, there's so many places where, Psalms are that unique place in Scripture where God gives us words to like frame the experiences in this broken world. And the psalmist is frequently searching in God's direction with anger for explanations for what's going on in this maddening and broken world that we live in. And so, when we recognize we are a welcomed guest in God's presence with these conversations because he wants to be with us and help us walk through those, it lowers so many of the barriers for us to come to him as a father.
Love that. Pastor Brad Hambrick, the book is called Angry with God, An Honest Journey Through Suffering and Betrayal. And Pastor Brad is the pastor of counseling at the Summit Church in Durham, North Carolina. Response from the book since it's been out, does anything stand out to you that maybe there's something you didn't expect somebody to say about it that's good?
I think the thing that stood out to me most is for a book on anger, the number of sweet people who would say thank you. Like if you write a book, Angry with God, you kind of expect people to get the all caps stuck on their keyboard if they send a message. But that's not the case, because when they realize like, my anger is part of my grief and I had been squelching that, I had been stifling it, and there's an opportunity for me to process this. I think for many people, the sweetness of replies from a book entitled Angry with God would probably be surprising.
Love it. And I think it's just thinking about it, I think it's a great book for parents to kind of impart some of that knowledge to their kids, because a lot of times kids have anger towards God and they may not know that it's anger towards God, or they may feel like, oh, I'll get in trouble if I'm angry with God. But this is something that kids, whether they're teenagers or young kids, need to know as well, I think.
I think that late high school, college age, where a lot of Christian parents, rightly so, have a fear of, hey, as my kids embark out on their own, are they going to stay true to their faith? And oftentimes what happens is young people get out and they see kind of the brokenness and the dog eat dog and the aggressiveness of our world, and they're not sure how to process what they see and experience.
Right.
And so something that helps them be more honest while honoring their faith, that accounts for the level of suffering that exists in this world. Because most people don't abandon their faith because the Trinity is theologically complex or the hypostatic union doesn't make sense to them. They start to walk away from their faith because of something that was painful that they just couldn't account for with what they remember from what they learned growing up. And something that says we can take an honest and gritty look at that. I do hope would serve young people in that season of life well.
Yeah. Talking with Brad Hambrick, pastor, the counseling pastor at Summit Church in Durham, North Carolina. Something else I want to ask you about, because obviously counseling is your main focus, and you've written, you've got blogs on your website, bradhambrick.com, and your latest blog series, I guess, is all on James and a counseling commentary on James. And I love James. There's so much practical knowledge that James imparts. Talk about how that came about and what made you focus on James.
Yeah. So I guess it was last year. I did a first edition of this through the book of Philippians. And, at the full candor level, as a counselor, so much of what I write on is heavy that I needed to do some writing that was a little more edifying for me. I found I would get to the keyboard and there was just a dark cloud of dread. Like, do I want to go into another hard and heavy subject?
Yeah.
And so almost as a nourishment for my own soul, it's like I'm gonna work through books of the Bible, thinking as a counselor, like noticing originally with Paul and Philippians, like as the Spirit was inspiring Paul to minister to these folks in that circumstance, not just what was said, but what did he pick out to talk about? How did he say it? What was the nature of the relationship that they shared that allowed him to say these things in a way that was receivable? And honestly, I just enjoyed it. And so then I was like, okay, James would be another great book to do that with. And James is one of those people, like he's kind of the Proverbs of the New Testament. He pops fast and moves from one subject to another, but he's writing to people who are in intense suffering. These are people who fled Jerusalem when the early church came under persecution. They moved to new cities. They had to talk in a second language. They didn't have any connections. They were being taken advantage of in the workplace. And so, how did James come alongside and pastor those folks through this letter? And so on the one hand, I hope there's not anything new that I'm saying, because if you say something new, you run a real strong risk of being heretical.
Right.
But at the same time, I hope the bent, the angle, I'm not coming as a preacher looking for things that resonate with a congregation. I'm looking at this through the lens of one-on-one ministry and what's going on in these relationships here. And it's one I hope to continue. The Association of Biblical Counselors group out of Dallas, Texas, this spring, they're going to be taking the Philippian series and releasing that in a bound copy. The hope is next year they'll do the same thing with the James series. And so if somebody's like, I kind of like this as a blog series, but I wish I could mark it up like I do other books. ABC, their website's christiancounseling.com. They'll be the ones picking that one up.
Awesome.
That is good. You said that's what, 2023, 2024? What?
Philippians will be this spring.
Okay.
So their conference is in April. And so I think it'll be coming out there. And then hopefully 24 will be when the one on James comes out.
We'd love to talk to you about that when that comes out.
That'd be awesome.
That's pretty amazing. Pastor Brad Hambrick with us. What else do you have coming up for the rest of 2023? No doubt you've got all kinds of stuff going on there at Summit, but you and your family, what are you up to 2023?
Our oldest son will be moving off to college.
Wow.
And so he's going into commercial flight and will be attending Auburn University. And so that's a bittersweet time. He's excited. We think he's ready. It just don't want to see him go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the younger one, this is springtime, so it's baseball season. And so we're just starting. We had a few scrimmages, first regular season game this week, and that's always a blast to get to go out and watch him do what he loves.
Now, are you coaching his team, or I know you like to coach little league teams? Do you coach his team too, or?
I retired from coaching as many times as Brett Favre retired from football. And I think I am officially and permanently, irrevocably retired, at least until grandchildren come along, and I don't want to rush that. So I
Well, that's
am
what Tom
just
Brady
a
said,
fan
and
at this
he
point.
came back too. So
Uh-huh.
that's funny.
Pastor Brad Hambrick, check out his books. You can check out, what do you have there, Dan? You have newgrowthpress.com, as we just talked about, Angry with God, and he has so many great books, and we look forward to also check out his blog. That blog is what, bradhambrick.com?
Yep.
That's
What
it.
it was? Check out the I can't wait to read that. I'm not real crazy about James because I always have to change my thinking when I read James, but I promise you I will try.
Uh-huh.
I will try. Brad Hambrick, thank you so much, buddy. We love you so much and appreciate all your hard work. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.